What's up, everyone? Oh, I forgot to close the door. Oops. Alright. Anyways, today, welcome to episode 3 of my movie reviews, and this is another animated film that's been not only one of the most highly anticipated animated films, but it's also considered as one of the most anticipated sequels and movies of the year. And it's a sequel to an animated film. It's a sequel to a film that was an introduction for a new animation studio that first came into the animation industry or business back in 2010, and it was a movie about, and the movie that introduced them was a movie about a villain who actually adopted 3 girls, and then apparently as he spends more time with them, he starts to feel more for them, and starts to join along the good side. In case you might be wondering what I'm talking about, now you could probably already guess what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Illumination Entertainment, where the first movie that introduced them was Despicable Me. So the movie I'm talking about, you can see this title, is the long-anticipated sequel, Despicable Me 2. Now I do want to let people know, I did see the first movie back in 2010, and I say I loved the movie so much. In fact, it was actually one of my favorite movies of 2010. Like, not only was it so hilarious and had really good characters, it had a really lot of heart and a really good original villain story. And I thought, to me, quite honestly, I thought Despicable Me was a great introduction for Illumination Entertainment. But then last year, they released a new original film, but it was based on a Dr. Seuss film, which was the Lorax. And because the Lorax is pretty much like one of the worst reviewed Dr. Seuss stories or books ever, and most people find it to be mostly underrated, or actually no, not underrated. It was an underrated storybook and that about an environmental message in the book. And so Illumination Entertainment decided to make their own movie based off of it, which I think, quite honestly, I think they made it because they do agree maybe the storybook was a bit underrated. So they probably decided to actually make a movie adaptation of the book. And then when they released the Lorax, it was pretty much met mixed results. It mostly got mixed reviews from both critics and audiences. While the audiences did like it because of its humor, or what it's trying to do, and the characters, most of the critics and audiences did not like the film because of the story. But the animation of it, I will admit, is pretty colorful though, and it definitely suits well to the Dr. Seuss style. But quite honestly though, I never really saw the movie. I just saw the trailers for it. I never saw the movie entirely, but I did see what the animation looked like. It definitely looked very colorful. But anyways, enough talking about that. Let's talk about Despicable Me 2. So what is the story of Despicable Me 2? Unlike most movies where it has this main plot and a subplot, this movie actually has 2 plots working together. The first plot being that Gru is now has been hired by the Anti-Villain League and is signed with his partner, Lucy, to go undercover and spy on a villain that has stolen a purple potion that will hulkify anything that consumes it, while at the same time, Gru is trying to find a woman for his life, not only for his life, but also to be a mom for the girls. Quite honestly, the way they display both these stories together is actually pretty well done, and it actually connects to each other very well. Like, you can probably tell by the way you hear it, what I'm talking about. The whole entire AVI spy on villain thing is pretty much a spy comedy story, and the whole time Find a Woman thing is a romance story. Now, some people might complain that the whole spy story might not be that original and can be predictable at times. Which I will admit though, most spy stories are usually predictable, but the way Illumination Entertainment described it here in this film is not only very interesting and so hilarious, but it also has some few unexpected twists in the film that I never expected to happen. And usually if you want to make a spy story, that's probably what you have to do. You have to add in some new interesting elements into each spy story, and also add in some neat unexpected twists in it to make it feel original. And thanks to Illumination Entertainment, and doing it the right way, they actually managed to pull it off. As for the romance plot, they don't focus on it too much to make it like a romantic spy comedy, but they do add in the right amount to make it the main purpose of the plot. If there maybe is one flaw I maybe would have with the story, I would say it's the subplot with the three girls. I will admit that the subplot with the three girls does have a bit of a connection to the main story, but the problem I have with it is that they go somewhere for Drew, but not for the girls. Like, for example, Margot having this hots for a boy, he does go somewhere for Drew, but not for Margot at all. Oh, and by the way, the boy you see in the film, he's the Runsler as a kid. So yeah, hi Runsler. Hey, don't care. anyways, that's pretty much that's my only small flaw though. The story, but without that, the story's actually very strong. It's really original, and it's a really good continuation from the first movie. And quite honestly, the story is pretty much an example of what made the first one, to me, really great. Now let's talk about the animation. Now, the animation, I will say this. I was not a huge fan of the animation in the first movie, though. However, at the same time, I did appreciate what they were trying to do in the first movie, and even in this film. I was never a huge fan of its character design, mainly because that its character design is more like the cartoony style, kind of like in Madagascar, or maybe some other film. However, the character animation of the film was done so well that it actually pretty much makes up for the problem. Like, it's not done too much to make it look like a Saturday morning cartoon, but it's just the right amount that pretty much makes up for the character design problem. And another thing they improved in that from the first movie was the textures. Like to me, it looks like the animators pretty much put it up so much detail into every object around them to make it look realistically good for a computer animated movie. Now, another thing I really like about it is the design on the settings. Like, you name it, the foreground, the background animation, and much more. It pretty much has basic stuff like a mall, but it is very colorful to look at. Like the restaurants, like the Mexican restaurant, the bakery, and even the wig store, and even the main lobby and the mall is really good and very colorful to look at. But when it gets to places like the API's round table or the villain's evil lair, that secret evil lair, that's when the settings get really good and gets really colorful and very pretty to look at. Yeah. Once again, the only problem I have with this is the character design, but like the story, it gets really good and sometimes it gets better as it keeps going. And finally, we have the characters. And let me tell you that the characters is actually one of the reasons why I'm actually excited for this film. And I'm really glad they're back. Not only are the main characters still their very lovable selves, but some of them are actually developed more better than they were before, and we have some new characters in there as good as the main ones. Let's start off with Drew, who I gotta say is, in my opinion, the most well-written and most well-developed character I've seen this year so far. And even for a movie by itself in that, but he's really well-developed. It's like, he's now an ex-supervillain who is now the father of the three girls, and is now assigned to go on a mission to find a villain with his partner. While at the same time, everyone keeps bugging him to get married as he starts to fall in love and have an interest in his new partner. So like, not only does this make him really well developed, but he's very likable, and he's pretty much one of the characters that makes the first movie really great. Well, with the exception of the minions. Oh, and speaking of the minions in this movie are still as hilarious as they were in the first movie, and what's good about them is that they appear a lot more in this film than they did in the first one, but not too much to keep interrupting the movie. Another nice addition to them that's a major positive is that they now have a purpose in the main plot, whereas in the first plot they were mostly the comedy relief that didn't have a purpose in the main story. If there is maybe two characters I would maybe have a problem with, though, I would say that maybe I would definitely say that maybe the first plot, I would say it might be the three girls. I will admit they're still funny and they can still be their cute selves sometimes, But the problem with them, however, is that they're not in the film that much, and they're not very important in this film like they were in the first film. And because that their subplot doesn't go anywhere for them, it pretty much feels like as if they don't have a main purpose in the main story. And then there's also the Doctor, who I don't really remember his name though, but usually people just refer to him as the Doctor. My problem with him is that he doesn't really appear that much. While I will admit he is developed alright though, because he really misses the old days of working for a supervillain. Nah. But he only appears in the movie like 2 times. Like the first time at the beginning, the second time, well, I'm not going to say when he appears the second time because of spoiler reasons. However, I still think he is developed nicely, and I do think he can be still likable. But my major problem is that he only appears like twice in this movie. As for the new characters, there's not really that many new characters who's in this film, but like I said before, they're still as likable as the main ones. Let's start off with the villain, who I'm not going to say his name because of spoiler reasons, who in my opinion is who is way more funnier and a way better antagonist than Victor from the first film. And I find that the way his design was changed back at the time, plus the fact that the villain's also a developed character, because we get to know a little bit about his backstory a little bit. And then there's Lucy, who's Gru's partner and a possible love interest. I will say though that I do think she is likable because she does have some good humor, and she can be likable. But my biggest problem with her is that a lot of times she can be way too over the top. Kind of like Lola or that bunny girl from Looney Tunes, from the Looney Tunes show. Well, actually, is it called the Looney Tunes show? It's a new TV show that's kind of like a mixture of Seinfeld with Looney Tunes. That's just my opinion though. And because of that, it makes it feel like as if she wants to be the comic relief of the movie and not the minions. Like she wants to compete against them to make them the comedy reliefs. So as you can tell, there are a couple characters that are just not really that strong, but the rest of the characters, like the villains, the main characters, and more, are so strong enough that the characters are pretty much the biggest highlight of the film alongside the story. So overall, what did I think of the movie overall? Not only did I think it's a really great movie overall, I thought it's a great sequel to the original. And it's kind of unexpected, quite honestly, though, because most sequels nowadays, even for animated movies, usually would be either a hit or a miss sometimes. Like, sometimes they could be as bad as the original, like, for example, Cars 2, or Ferngully 2, or any of those animated movies that end up being really bad sequels to the first one. But on the other hand, some sequels end up being pretty good as the original, if not maybe better than the first one, like Kung Fu Panda 2, or Toy Story 2 and 3, and much more. And quite honestly, I would say that I would definitely put Despicable Me 2 alongside the top 10 best animated sequels out there, if not top 20 best. But that's just my opinion. So overall, I definitely liked the story of the movie. I thought it was pretty hilarious and very good. But I liked the animation despite the character design being a bit too cartoony. And I definitely do like the characters a lot in this movie. With the exception of the doctors and the girls not having that much of a purpose in the plot, the rest of the characters, I absolutely like them so much in this movie. This is a high recommendation for anybody who is a big fan of the first one, such as myself. And even if you've never seen the first one, I'd say still go ahead and watch it when you get the chance. Also, there's another thing I want to point out though, is a little news update. That if you stay around near the end credits, we see the Minions doing an audition for their own spin-off film. And yes, people, they actually announced that there's going to be a spin-off movie of the Minions that comes out next year in December, and it's actually the prequel spin-off. Now, I don't know if it will be as good as this, though. I don't know. But quite honestly, I honestly cannot wait for that film. So my rating of it overall, well, I give the movie a 9 out of 10. I really absolutely loved the movie. I thought it was as good as the first one. It has the same strengths as the first one. It adds in some new things into it that adds some new strengths to make it as good as the first one. Now, like I said, if you're a huge fan such as myself of the first movie, then you're definitely gonna like this movie a lot. Even if you have never seen the first one, I say still give the sequel a watch. So thank you everyone for my movie reviews. Now, I know this was much shorter than my other videos and that, or my other animated movie reviews, or something like that. So I wanted to point this out as quick as possible, because I have seen it yesterday and I absolutely loved the film so much. I honestly can't wait to get it on DVD when it comes out. So thanks again, I'll see you later.